Dobrý večer, já jsem Bernard Stork. I've decided to run it in English, so I hope you don't mind a little bit more because of the time. So I'm a partner at PLP Architecture. We're an international company and architects in London, working locally and internationally. But my proposition today is really that we're living through a technological revolution, and things are changing, but not all of them are changing. And the big question for us is designing buildings and designing spaces that people use. What are the important things, and how can we take advantage of the technology that we see around us? And are we able to respond to those challenges and opportunities? And in particular, I'm going to talk about workplace, and the way we work has evolved, and it evolved with technology, it evolved with the way we communicate with each other, and some of those things are really now meaning that our way of communicating is totally changing. And an overlay of digital realities onto our reality means that there are other things that will be important in the future. And designing buildings means thinking about the future, not knowing the future, but trying to be able to design something that is adaptable and can respond to the future needs. And what we think that we're going to need with all of the technological advances and an AI, and I'm not going to bore you with that, is we are focusing on the individual. That is the most important thing. Really, the individual is what matters. When you look at the buildings, when you look at the balance sheets, when you look at how much you spend on energy and how much you spend on salaries, people are what matters. And that is very important. And we want to be able to do things that respond to the individuals, that really creates a platform for them to work better, feel better, be more productive, but be also more successful in what they're doing and what they're doing the best. And that's where we see the technology. It's an enabler to do something better. And we see buildings as part of a team. So buildings that can respond, that are intelligent, they facilitate things to you. But it is not about spending your hours on trying to figure out something. If it doesn't work smoothly, it's not worth it. And I think I keep walking in front of the screen, so it's not so good. And so our project in Amsterdam, which I'm showing here, was one of the early prototypes of a building that's highly connected, but also it's highly sustainable, very low energy consumption. But most of all, it was all about how people feel and experiences. So you always need to look at it in a global. So it's the sustainability and well-being of people, but at the heart of that is the meaningful, transformative experience for people. And that leads me to just as a question maybe for later, and apologies for having to run earlier today, but floor area does not equal value. There is something else that is valuable, and I think that we as architects are always trying to convey this message that both clients and developers and tenants are looking for things beyond a square meter number. So what is it? What is that thing that sort of drives us? Why are we talking about all these things? And we think that the future is really, and the commodity of the future is human creativity. This is what will define, what will separate us from other sort of repetitive tasks. And for that, we really need to create spaces that are human-centric, and they help to foster future skills, which both go by learning new things, which doesn't stop at school. So how do we sort of encourage knowledge spillover, people talking to each other and learning from each other at work? We have 3 generations, maybe 4 generations of workforce in the office. At the same time, that needs to be supported by social interaction. Those soft skills will be really important in the future, and are already. And how can we create spaces that help to bring people together? But it's not all about this buzz and meeting and stuff. You also need to be able to process that information. So spaces that are far more sort of individual and allowing for to make sense of the information. So we're kind of hoping that, in those kind of moments when you learn something, you think about that, learn something, you think about it, learn something, you think about it, eventually you might have a moment where the creative sparks. And it's not always at the desk. It's not always. But so we're looking at what are those sort of spatial inputs that we can do to support this. And it used to be just a tree and a falling apple that done it before, and we're looking at how we can improve on that. And a little bit of our history is that we've been always sort of focused on humans, on people, and we've been all sort of throughout our history. We were a 10-year-old company, but we go back maybe 20, 30 years. Some of us, not me, working together in the same with the same group, and new people coming. So, and we always sort of focus on that. What is that space? How we can bring people together? It's almost like being a bit of an alchemist, kind of trying to test things and see how that works or not. And I will show you two case studies that sort of talk about or illustrate my points. One of them is the biomedical research facility in London, which is an amazing institution where 6 of the biggest sort of research institutes came together specifically to bring researchers from different groups, from different departments together in one place to really foster that sort of interdepartmental discussions and chance encounters of people that would never meet in different situations, and yet they find something in common, and that leads to discovery. So the client was, from that sense, was very, very fast forward-looking, because they knew when they look at the past discoveries, when they've peeled back of what started those discoveries, a lot of the times they realized that it was coming from a discussion of 2 people that were not meant to meet. And so, in normal circumstances. And the other important thing is how do you actually promote that for young generations, bringing people to science, opening it up to public. So really sort of trying to open up what otherwise be a sort of a cell somewhere in the corner as a laboratory for that. So we sort of broken the mass into 4 distinct volumes, and we placed sort of a workplace of write-up spaces onto the outside of those wings, so that we can then progressively put laboratories in the center, which then became a shared lab for workplace. And so that started to open up a space that suddenly relieved people from that sort of a sense of fragmentation, and started to have visual and physical interaction. And then the seating plan, you can see that you have a chance to sit next to someone who's, if you're new to science, sits next to someone who actually achieve things, and then the sharing of knowledge is thus encouraged through physical space. And a really interesting sort of inspiration for young people. And we're very pleased to hear that just recently one of the researchers at this institute was awarded a Nobel Prize for his and his team work. So we're hoping that a little bit of that is maybe down to some of the spatial quality of the workplace they have. But again, it is about revealing and then bringing other people in. So that interface, that knowledge spillover is not just within a company, that's between the companies. And this is a fantastic space, and I really liked the experience of the Terra sort of seeing beyond and being able to kind of create a social events. And I think that you want to bring that beyond the sort of the boundary of a single company. The second, oh my God, that's all right. I'm running through. You're going to have time for questions if you want. So Imagination Campus, this is a second case study I wanted to share with you, which is our recent work for Sky Television in London. Their headquarters in Western London, part of a larger campus that they have, which actually grown from a warehouse where they started, and then gradually sort of built buildings around. And then this was a site of a large warehouse from another sort of a logistic company, from an logistic company. And they bought the site, and they decided to create what now is called Sky Central as a headquarter for 3,500 people in under the one roof. And so that was a really challenging task, but working with Sky, and they were again very fast and forward-looking, and they wanted to create an agile workplace. So they realized that with that amount of people and with the different departments that they have, but also very fluid departments, because they are about innovation, they are about thinking of new projects from their perspective, and then growing and then shrinking. So they wanted to create a space that helped them to do that. So it's this 3,500 employees actually is allowing people, the space allows those employees to work in a number of ways throughout the space. But one of the challenges, or interesting challenges architecturally, was the scale of the building. And that is 2.5 times the size of a football pitch. So when we started thinking about that, it was really a question of it's an interior urbanism. It's something that you need to think about, how you process, how you walk through, how you experience those spaces, how you orient yourself, you understand, you have a sense of belongings, etc. So it was way beyond a front door entrance, lobby, lift, go to the 6th floor, and that's always your route to the desk, and that's it. So we were very fortunate that also was in a sense a headquarter building, so that was all sort of one company that we were able to work with the whole space as a unity. So when we started thinking about it, we sort of really talked about urban terms in terms of creating streets that link spaces across all 3 levels. We're creating topography, so not everything is at the same level. On level 1, for instance, we inserted mezzanines that were at a meter and a half lower than the main floor to create a variety of spaces, but also a sort of a slight surprise, and element of surprise within that space, but also scale. And then clearing, sort of moments of density, and yet suddenly you have a smaller scale footprint openings, but that takes you all the way up to the roof, which became a feature for the whole space. But also, and very importantly, we're looking at creating intimate spaces that are of a scale that relates to human beings. So there's a variety of those. So you can find those kind of quirky little places, and we saw that as sort of a little urban streets that sometimes are found spaces that you wouldn't normally expect between that in an office. And also, what was interesting was, because it was a 3-level building, we really sort of talked about making people walk rather than use lifts. And so the idea was that we propose or offer a choice of routes to the workplace. So you can take a route through a Grand Plaza, take a stair, talk. Or you can use ramps, which sort of gently brings those 2 levels together. And I personally like that very much from the point of view is I don't know if you experienced that, and I think a couple of people here experienced it today with me. With me, there's the sort of a sense of you have a discussion, you have a conversation, and you come to the lift, conversation's going, the lift door opens, you go in, conversation stops. The space is too tight, and there is no sort of it's a bit awkward. So we wanted to move away from that. We wanted to kind of make that conversation flowing as you're walking through. So those spaces are, or the overall concept of this was based on the idea of there's a central hub which is the space of the sort of the greatest interaction, where most of the routes, if you imagine the various routes through the building between the floors, they meet, which creates a space for collaboration, but also a sense of belonging. And then as you move outer into the edges, you have more individual work. But that's kind of a bigger picture. And within that, there's a series of villages of workspace that are arranged around a series of smaller individual sort of like a home points, kitchenettes and stuff. But the central space became something that we really were sort of keen on doing three things. Bringing circulation out to really celebrate movement and thus celebrate well-being or encouraging well-being, encouraging movement rather than using lifts, but also a content. So we're bringing in amenity spaces, breakout rooms, and we'll show you the studio as well as an element. But also, and quite importantly, it was a sort of a non-standard space. So it was something that sort of broke from the kind of the rigidity of a standard floor plate. So overall, it's the orange is that sort of a connecting tissue of ramps and stairs, and actually the whole building is conceived as a single fire compartment. So we were able to use stage evacuation to provide all of the circulation and staircases within the atrium spaces. So there is nothing hidden inside the cores. So it's a large floor plate which is eroded by this sort of H-shaped atrium, which changes, and into which we've inserted the connecting mezzanines, which are at the lower levels. And then around that, you have a series of workspaces and neighborhoods arranged around the perimeter of the building. And each of them, and then every time you kind of have that kind of a relationship between the workspace and the central spaces. There are a lot of amenities in this building, and this is very particular for Sky and for this site. And the reason was, Sky were really focused on the offer for their employees. They knew that they need to attract talent, but very much so they need to retain talent. So they really wanted to make sure that people are happy in a sense that they want to come to the office. They don't feel like, because the location of the site is slightly remote. If you know London a little bit, being in that part of London, it's a little bit out of the way. So they really went deep into trying to bring a number of food offers throughout the building, and that was also to encourage people coming from different buildings within a wider Sky campus to come in and maybe have lunch or snack with, and then therefore meet other people. And as you move around, you always have that sort of a visibility towards the center space. So that really becomes an element of changing your perspective. So, and sometimes we talk about technology and building being responsive and being very adaptable, and then in the edge we are able to adapt the temperature, light levels according to the individuals. But also there's something to the creativity that actually some discomfort in a sense. It's quite interesting, and you can see that in retail as well. Sometimes you kind of have a different type of seating for different purposes, and sometimes just sitting on the edge of a chair, just having that kind of I can't stand here for 6 hours, and then it maybe clicks, and maybe you can do it. So the circulation became really a part of the social life across the whole space with meeting rooms. You can notice a lot of thought and material that went into use of timber and use of indoor plants. There's live plants. There's about 24,000 plants. And then we used cross-laminated timber as a structural element, so that you see the soffit of it is actually the revealed a structural deck for these mezzanines. So we used all three materials. So a concrete for the main base, a base-built slab around, and then steel with timber for those inserted mezzanines and stairs. And I think that's also a very interesting kind of topic to talk about, what type of materials and colors and light and sound effect you bring to the space. One of the things that we were sort of conscious about right at the beginning was talking about such a big space. How can we achieve a right soundscape? So it doesn't feel like you're in an echoed room. You don't understand anything that someone sits right next to you. And is that it? Okay, that's it. It was a beautiful sound there for the record. A few images of those spaces. and the roof is a nice. So, am I allowed, or you're going to shoot me?
Okay. You get a couple of seconds here.
Okay. The roof became a beautiful structure that spans across the whole building, a 21-meter span, cross-laminated timber, and then really gave it a character. But at the end of the day, it's about people bringing them together, testing all of the structural structural conditions of the proposal for all these people to just see those two guys before a fight. I don't know whether you're into boxing, but this is Anthony Joshua and Vladimir Klitschko's press conference that happened in the building. And lastly, just if you do follow Sky News, then you might be able to glimpse into our building, because one of the story of connections and communication is Sky being a media company. They wanted to showcase both their internal organization and their own working, so that from the studio that was inserted into the main street, it is all glass box that actually uses the building as a backdrop. But also conversely, when people and communities coming into the building, they can see the news going on live in the box right by the entrance. Thank you.
Thank you. Můžeme pokračovat v češtině, nebo...
No, určitě.
Dobře, výborně. Budeme pokračovat. Děkuju moc, Bernarde. Ještě u mě vydržte vteřinku.
Jo,
než přijde čas na otázky přes slajdu, určitě se ptejte, nezapomeňte, protože Bernard pak běží na letadlo, jestli jsem to pochopil správně.
No, skoro, no.
A nebude tady k dispozici pro networking.
Ne, bohužel, omlouvám se.
Tak dávejte otázky teď. Mě zaujalo, vy jste do toho dali spoustu energie, spoustu nápadů, spoustu času a pak přijde to reálné využití, kdy ty lidi se nastěhují dovnitř, začnou tam pracovat. Bylo něco, co vás překvapilo, jak oni používali tu budovu třeba jinak, než vy jste čekali, že budou?
V podstatě princip toho, co jsme navrhli, bylo vlastně o tom jim dát možnost pracovat způsobem, jaký chtějí. Takže vlastně to, jestli přesunou desky tak, jak potřebují pro svůj tým, nebo používají breakout spaces víc na formální meetingy, to vlastně bylo v součástí toho přemýšlení. Takže mě ani tak jako nepřekvapilo, že by to používali nějakým jiným způsobem, ale spíš jsem byl potěšený, když jsem tam byl po té, co už to nějakou dobu běželo, a vlastně sednul jsem si v kafe a čekal jsem na meeting a pracoval jsem na laptopu a viděl jsem people, kteří dělali to sami, pracovali, měli snídaní nebo mid-morning snídaní a vlastně to měli jako meeting a pak zase rozešli. A to.
Takže nebylo nic, co by vás překvapilo, že lidi to používají jinak, než jste čekal?
Lidi to používají mnoho způsoby a není v lidských silách to přesně vědět, jakým způsobem se všechno bude používat, ale co jsem říkal, je nepřekvapilo mě, že by to nějakým způsobem bylo používané jinak, než jsme si představovali platformu na to.
Dobře. Tak. Ještě mě zajímá, vy máte možnost srovnání Evropa minimálně, Česko. Jak jsou na tom Češi, české budovy, které se v poslední době stavějí právě v porovnání s tím, jaký je třeba evropský vysoký standard, co se týče toho, jak budovy fungují zevnitř?
Já si myslím, že tam, já bych to nesrovnával podle národnosti nebo lokace. Je to hodně o tom, jakým způsobem se k tomu staví celý tým, ale myslím si, že hrozně moc záleží na klientovi. Ve smyslu, v případě Sky jsme měli klienta, který opravdu tlačil na to, aby se vytvořilo něco, co vlastně je jiný, než jakým způsobem pracovali doteď. A měli svůj vlastní tým, který strávil dlouhý čas tím, že mluvil se zaměstnanci, vysvětloval, diskutoval o tom, jakým způsobem se vlastně připravuje ten agile workplace, takže lidi, když se potom nastěhovali do té budovy, tak vlastně už věděli, jakým způsobem se budou moc pohybovat. Nebo
Dobře, máme tady otázky z publika. Jste s některým z vašich projektů spokojený natolik, že byste v něm chtěl pracovat, například ve Sky Central?
Jako zaměstnanec. Já jsem velice rád, pracuji tam, kde jsem, jakožto architekt, ale ve smyslu prostoru Sky Central určitě je to můj hodně oblíbený objekt.
No to by bylo špatný, kdybyste řekl, že ne, že jo. Jak se podařilo prosadit přes hasiče tak obří požární úsek a shromažďovací prostor? To jsou v Británii jiné předpisy.
V Británii pracovali jsme s Arab inženýry, kteří vlastně připravili velice detailní fire engineering solution, nevím, jak to překládat do češtiny, a což znamená, že vlastně dělali hodně studií o tom, co se týče rozšíření kouře, stage evacuation, jsou tam v podstatě je to v podstatě založený na principu letiště, kde vlastně máte stage evacuation, máte informační body, který vám říká, jakým směrem máte jít, který schodiště třeba nepoužívá, pokud by byl požár v blízkosti toho místnosti.
Dobře. Jaké používáte světla? Jsou to běžné zářivky LED světla nebo tělesa, která emitují přirozenější světlo?
Good question. Hlavní princip u budovy Sky bylo využít přirozeného světla daylight na čelo, takže ta střecha, kterou jste viděli, která je 160 na 100 metrů, měla asi má velké množství skylights, které vlastně se koncentrují tam, kde je to atrium, takže jsme schopni přinést denní světlo do středu budovy, do kterému vlastně tím pádem vytváříme prostory, které mají denní světlo s obou stran, to skutečný venek a to atrium. Jinak používáme low energy lighting, LEDs, etc.
Poslední dotaz, kterému dáme prostor, se týká akustiky. Zmínil jste akustickou pohodu. Jak jste to řešili? Jak jste řešili prostorovou akustiku? Je tam hodně otevřených prostorů.
K tomu jsem se nedostal už v rámci času. Tak v podstatě zase s Arab jsme dělali hodně testů a jestli jste si všimli, tak většina, všechny sites těch hlavních podlaží mají perforovaný cladding, který je akustický, který jsou akustické panely. A v podhledu u všech podlaží je vlastně série akustických baffles, což jsou vlastně absorpční zavěšený panely, které jsou tam přes celou tu plochu. A i v rámci těch mezzaninů, což jsou ty dřevěný podlaží, tak vlastně i pod nimi jsou tyhle zavěšený akustický panely.
Dobře. Já moc děkuju. A to byl Bernard Stork ze studia PLP Architecture.
Děkuji.
Ano, ale rychle, prosím. Rozhodně. Asi byl postřeh pro vás. Dobrý.
Halo?
No, slyšíme vás.
Kreativita je strašně moc důležitá. Do budoucna v společnosti, společnost jakožto lidstvo, ale i komerční společnosti opravdu si musí koukat na to, jakým způsobem můžou inovovat, budou inovovat. To je to, co žene náš rozvoj dopředu. Všechny obyčejní práce, co jsou repeatable, který se dají předvídat, to nebudeme dělat. Kreativita je to, co vlastně, z čeho vlastně budeme moct dál žít, tlačit a inovovat. A proto když designujeme budovy, tak se snažíme udělat prostory takový, který vlastně nějakým způsobem prostorově vytvářejí a umožňují lidem být tvořiví. Oni sami, aby byli tvořiví v svém pracovním prostoru, ve své práci, ve svém oboru.
Děkuju. Aby jsme my byli tvořiví, ale v rámci časového pokroku, tak musíme pokročit dál. Já vám moc děkuju, Bernard.
Děkuju moc krát.
Tak to byl Bernard Stork.
Nejdůležitější prvek jsou spokojení uživatelé. A když se podíváte do budoucna, nejdůležitějším prvkem je lidská kreativita. Jejich aktivita, jejich schopnost inovovat věci v rámci společnosti, inovovat i přes boundaries, hranice jednotlivých departmentů v určité společnosti. A kancelářská budova by měla umožnit lidem se setkávat, umožnit lidem vyměňovat si informace, vyměňovat si zkušenosti. V práci v současné době jsou tři generace lidí. Je potřeba, aby se lidi vzdělávali a vzájemně se vzdělávali. A není to o věku, je to o experience, je to o znalostech. Druhá věc je, aby měli prostory, ve kterém lidé mohou sami si přemýšlet a sami procesovat to, co si vyměnili jako informace s lidmi. Takže prostory, ve kterých jsou sami, velice důležité je přinést zeleň úplně do budov, okolo budov a mít prostory, ve kterých máte možnost třeba výhledu, jako tady. Je to fantastický moment, kdy vlastně po konferenci, jako je ta, které jsme dneska, kde vlastně je to o tom, o social interaction, potkávání lidí, slyšet různý názory, různé zkušenosti a pak vlastně mít tady a mít možnost si o tom popřemýšlet. To je fantastické.